Okay, here we go. We are waiting for the Facebook Live to kick in. It's just about to start, I believe. And if you are joining me on Facebook, then um, jump in the comments and say hello. I would love that. And oh, good. Okay. I can see that the mic is turned off. So not the mic, but yeah. Okay, here we go. So if you're joining me here on Facebook Live, for the live stream of the Thriving Creative. Welcome. Jump into the comment section. Let me know you're here. And if you have any questions you want me to answer about being a thriving creative, go ahead and ask them right there in the chat of Facebook. So here we go. Today's episode. Are you struggling with setting prices for your work? We know, or I've seen over and over again, that pricing your creative work can feel really overwhelming. And that happens whether you're just starting out or you're looking to raise your prices or you have a new opportunity to exhibit. And so there are a lot of other reasons that a lot of reasons that you would be looking at pricing your work. We can get into that later in the show. And I just want you to know that many of us doubt whether people will pay or might even question if our work is worth it. We all kind of will go through those moments of being a little insecure about our work. So, in this episode of The Thriving Creative, I'm talking about how to confidently set prices that reflect the true value of your art. And if you've ever struggled with pricing or hesitated when someone asks you the price of a work, or they even question you on your rates, this episode is for you. It's not just about numbers, it's really about honoring your time, your skills, and your unique magic that only you can bring into the world. So let's dive in. Okay, welcome back to the Thriving Creative. Pricing is one of the most common challenges for artists and makers and creatives at every stage of their careers. It's easy to get caught in a loop of self-doubt. Am I charging too much? Is it too little? Am I pricing myself right out of this market? But really, pricing doesn't have to feel like a guessing game. When you price your work with confidence, you're creating a foundation that connects you with the right buyers. It sustains your creative practice and it builds a thriving career. And that's what we're all about here, right? In this episode, I'll explore how to shift your mindset around pricing, break down practical steps to calculate your rates, and share how to communicate your prices with confidence. And if you're looking for even more ways to diversify your income, which is something I definitely advocate for, check out my free guide, which I'll link below, 50 Creative Income Ideas You Can Start Today. The link is in the show notes once this is up on YouTube, and I will add it to the Facebook post as well. Okay, so here we go. So shifting your mindset around pricing. Pricing isn't just about the numbers, what price you put on the price sheet or the wall or however you're putting your prices out there in the world. It's really about how you value yourself and your work. And there's a lot of things that go into what comes into the creation of a work, right? You know this, but I'm here to remind you. So one of the biggest hurdles that creatives have is undervaluing their work. We tell ourselves things like, people won't pay that much. I can't charge more because it didn't cost me much to make. But the price of your work isn't really just the material cost. It's your time, it's your skills, it's your creative vision, it's the career you've already established for yourself or haven't. It's okay either way, whether you're beginning or in the middle or, way in the late stages of your career. These questions come up. So take contemporary artist Hiba Shabazz, for example. Her stunning, large-scale paintings celebrate the female form and often reflect themes of beauty and self-discovery. Her pricing reflects not just the cost of creating her work, but the years of practice, education, and perspective that she brings to each piece. You can look her up. Her work is amazing, and you can see what I mean. So ask yourself, what story am I telling about the value of my work through my pricing? So let's say you put a really low price on something because you're feeling like you just really want to sell it. You really need the money, for example, and you put a really low price on a work that has taken you many, many hours and it's really beautifully done. And the materials, even though you might have had them in the studio, they actually cost you something. You might not remember how much they cost, but they did probably cost you something. Even if it's time in acquiring the materials. Sometimes artists are using recycled materials, but still there's time involved in that. And there's a degree of cost when you factor in your time. And another question is, what would happen if I saw my work as holding real value and I priced it accordingly? So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into the practical steps to set your prices. Okay, you ready? So let's break down the numbers. Here's a framework to confidently set prices that reflect the true value of your work. First, you calculate your costs. Include the materials, the tools, your studio rent, and any outsourced services. Excuse me. For example, if you have to hire somebody to make your panels or to make frames, that is a big expense to add on to the cost of your canvas or paperwork or whatever you're working on. So you have to figure those into what tools and equipment or even technology have you invested in order to create your work. So that is also a part of what goes into the pricing. And then your studio rent. What are you paying for your rent each month, if you do pay rent, or for the portion of your home that you use, or however you do it? Think about these things because it's not just the actual, like, this piece of paper costs $4.99 for a nice sheet of paper, and the pastels cost, maybe $12, right? It's not just that. You have to figure in what's going to happen with the framing, your studio, your time. We're going to get to the time. That's number 2. Value your time. So decide on an hourly rate and account for all the hours you spend, including the planning, as well as the creating and the marketing and the documenting. Okay, so it's not just like, oh, I just whipped off this drawing on this. All right, so I spent, let's say it was $10 for materials, right? For that piece of work on paper. Let's say it only took you like 10 minutes. Sometimes that can happen. Sometimes it can take 4 hours or even 4 days. It really depends on the intricacy, the how you work, what you're creating, right? And I'm just talking about visual work right now. I'm not even talking about like video editing and all of this other kind of work. So really value your time. How much time has gone into planning the work, creating the work, documenting the work, and whether you're doing that yourself with photography or scanning your work, or you're hiring a photographer, that's another one of those costs. And then also the time that's involved in marketing your work. Are you making LinkedIn posts, or are you making social media posts? Are you putting it up on your artwork archive or your website? So all of these things take time. So let's say you choose an hourly rate, and we'll talk about different rates in a moment. And you account for all those hours that go into producing this work of art. Okay, number 3, factor in your expertise. What's that mean? That means your years of practice. How long have you been practicing as an artist? Whether it's full-time, part-time, on the side, whatever it is. Did you go to school for it? Have you been basically an artist for your whole adult life? Did you just get out of art school? These kinds of questions. And then also factor in the skill and your unique perspective. Like, do you do meticulous work? Do you do traditional materials and you only stick to like very, very, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the original kinds of materials, like old icon paintings used to be made with rabbit skin glue and a particular kind of gesso, which is not at all like what you're buying from Golden nowadays. It's not to say that it's better, it's or worse. It's just to say that it's an entirely different skill set if you're making your materials and you're using materials that have um, a different, they're sourced differently, for example. And there's another whole level of skill involved in creating that work, right? And so, yes, so factor in your expertise. Like, are you doing very highly unusual, highly skilled work? Factor in your practice. How long have you been practicing? How many exhibitions have you had already, if you've had any, right? Um, and where you've exhibited. These are important factors. And then also your skills, your unique perspective. You know, maybe you come from a background as a neurosurgeon, for example, and now you are making sculpture. Well, and maybe your sculpture has something to do with neurobiology, right? So all of those years of your experience as a neurosurgeon um, going into your work actually counts as part of your unique perspective and your deep skill, right, related to the topic. So it's really interesting to think about this. Even a lawyer who's turning, or maybe hasn't stopped being a lawyer, but is also making art, and the work is informed by their practice as an attorney, maybe a social justice attorney, for example, then that is also a part of what you're factoring in as your experience. So that was that third one. Okay, number 4, research the market. Look at what similar artists are charging. And when I say similar artists, that's there's a whole bunch of interpretation there, right? Because you're going to be very, very unique, of course. And most artists are very different from one another. However, let's say you are a young artist, fresh out of art school, and you're making paintings of basically a certain size, a certain um, genre, a certain subject matter. And when you go online or you go to galleries and you see work that kind of resembles that, and you look at their resume, their CV, and you see where they've shown and what they're doing and what the prices are and how much they've been showing, whether it's not at all, like you're fresh out of school, they're fresh out of school, they've only had 1 or 2 shows, then that is a person who's similar to you, right? Like they're in their career stage that's similar to you. Yeah. So for example, if you're doing pop art paintings or prints or large scale pop art, don't look at the prices of Andy Warhol, because you're not Andy Warhol. It's not to say you're worse or better. It's just to say that there's a whole legacy that goes to how his work is now priced on the market. And it has nothing to do with where he was in the days when he was making that work. A lot of it has skyrocketed in value. And also, if you look at his early work, he wasn't making a ton of money back in the early days. It was only later once he really got the factory going and he really got these relationships with collectors and dealers going that he was really making money. So that's what I mean. Like, make sure you are, when you're looking at the market, doing apples to apples, right? Not apples to oranges or cantaloupes or something, right? Okay, and then this is very important. Number 5, you need to add a profit margin, right? You don't want to just recover your expenses and your time, be paid for your time. Ideally, you want to have enough money to reinvest in more materials and to pay your rent and all of those things. So, or and put some in savings, or donate to a charity, however it is that you want to handle the money that you receive for the paintings or the drawings or the videos or whatever you're creating, then make sure you build in a margin that can support your practice and your growth, right? Um, yeah. So for example, if you have a tiny margin and you're just barely covering your expenses, your time, your expenses, all the things we talked about, then you might have a tiny bit to, you could go out to dinner, right? You could put some in savings, or you could put money towards a bigger investment, like let's say for an expensive piece of equipment, like a really good printer or a really good machine that you need in your studio for doing the machining and the technical work, or to hire an assistant. So it's really important to bear that in mind. Now, the other really, really important factor here that's uh, actually, I don't even really go into it here that much, but uh, well, I'll get to that once we do this example. Okay. So there's your profit margin, and then there's going to be the retail price, the price at the gallery, if you're showing through a gallery, what that price is. So that's another whole piece that's involved if you're selling through galleries. If you're not selling through galleries, there's no problem with it. Okay. But let me just give you an example based on the practical steps to setting your prices that I just went through. Right. Number one, calculate your cost. Number two, value your time. Number three, factor in your experience. Number four, research the market. And number five, add a profit margin. So here's an example. Say you're creating a painting like I've talked about. And let's say in this case, materials cost $50 and it takes you 10 hours to complete. And you decide that your hourly rate is going to be $30 an hour. So that's $350 for the cost that you factored in on your time. So if you add just a 25% profit margin, then your price becomes $437.50. Round that up to $450 or $500 to make it a clean and easy number for your buyers to understand. Okay. So here I have this painting. It's $500. That's if they're buying it from you directly. Okay. This is really important. So that painting for you to sell, you want to receive $500 for it, or $450, let's say. So when you put it into a gallery, a commercial gallery, whose business is built on making sales, then they are going to take a significant portion of the sale price. So now, obviously, if you've been in the art world for a while and you've been selling your work, you already know this. But for those that are just starting out and you haven't really thought about this, this is really important. So a gallery might agree to show your work, show one piece or all your pieces, give you a show or put you in a group show, whatever. They are going to want to receive at least 50% of the retail price. So if you were to put the price tag in the gallery for $500, you will only get $250. That means you will not get all the money for your time. And you can still cover your expenses, but you're not covering your time, right? So that painting, if you need to get $450 or $500 from it, it needs to be at least priced at $900. Then you get half of that, you get $450. Then you're covered, you get your 25% margin plus a little. Let's say you say, I want to get no less than 500. Okay, the price is going to be $1,000. In some cases, some galleries will mark it up and they'll take 60%. Some galleries, very few, will take 40%. And if you're working with like local non-commercial gallery establishments, like a cafe, a library, a nonprofit gallery, they tend to take a lot less. It might be 20% or 30%. Now, here's the thing. when you start showing your work out there in the world, whether it's from your own studio, right? And you have one price, from a commercial gallery that's going to take 50%. That's what you might think is another price, but it's not another price. And then the third possibility we talked about is like a local cafe or library or nonprofit gallery. So they're going to take just 20 or 30%. Now, you would think that would give the same piece of art three different prices, but it's really important that you don't have that piece of work showing up with three different prices. Why? Because one person, a collector who sees the work in the gallery, the commercial gallery, for example, for $1,000 and then sees it later because it didn't sell somewhere else, like in the library or cafe, for a different price or something just like it. Let's say the first people bought it for $1,000 and then they see something from the same series in a cafe of your work and its price is $750. Then they'll be like, wait, I just paid $1,000 for that piece. What's up with that? You have to put the price at the same price everywhere. Even in your studio, especially if you are selling through a gallery who's also handling your work. So let's say they're selling it for $1,000. You have to put it in a cafe for $1,000 and you have to sell it through your studio for $1,000. Unless, of course, there's like a sale or something like that, a special sale. But if you have a gallery handling your work, they do not look kindly upon you selling artwork from your studio. Generally speaking, they still want to get a cut. They don't like you working around them and vice versa. They don't like it when collectors are working around them. Understandably, I mean, they have to carry these very big rents and these very big commercial budgets, to advertise and staff the place and all that. So their expenses are going to be really high, especially if they're in a prime location, right? So you have to consider that. And that can be really important for how you decide to go forward with your work and to share it in the world, right? So are you going to be selling directly to your collectors from your studio or from your website or from some other market, an online gallery location type thing? So bear that in mind. Okay, moving on. I can go further into that, and I'm happy to talk with anybody about that if they want some consulting on pricing and exhibiting with galleries and all that kind of thing. I love talking about that stuff. And also bearing in mind, like the gallery, if you're showing with the gallery, look at the prices, the price list of other artists that are in the same experience range as you. Okay. And then also exhibits in other locations. If you happen to see, well, this is just coming to me. This is like not even in my notes because I'm just getting all these ideas. Let's say you see an exhibit in a library and there are a lot of pieces sold in that show, and that you can know that because they're the red dots. And you look at the price list and you see what those pieces were selling for. And then also you consider how much work went into this work. What's this artist's CV look like? Where have they shown? How long have they been doing this? So you get to, that's your market research, right? So then you're like, oh, that person has, 12 years more of experience than I do and like 30 shows. And I'm only having my second show. So I'm not going to price my work like that artist. She's already established. But maybe a third of that price would feel good. And I can work up to that. Isn't that exciting? So, but on the other hand, if you've also been at it for 12 years and you've had 30 or 40 shows, then you'll also have a sense of how to price your work. Really, this one is for people who are kind of getting started for the most part. Or just as a reminder, right? If you haven't been doing exhibitions and stuff for a while. Okay, moving on. Now, communicating your prices with confidence. Excuse me. Once you've set your prices, the next step is communicating them with clarity and with confidence. So here's what you do. First, you state your prices clearly. You list them on your website or social media or on a sheet if you're showing them in the studio or a gallery, and you just share them confidently when asked. Number two, focus on the value. Highlight the story that's behind the work, the inspiration. You can talk about the process, what's involved in creating the piece. People love to know how much time a piece takes, which is funny for me because sometimes I can work really, really quickly, prolifically, and the piece is done like before I feel like I even got started. And other times it'll take months or weeks or whatever. And there's a lot of labor that goes into the piece. So it all depends on what I'm creating. So time isn't always such a big factor. And also, another thing about time is, especially when people are asking you, like, how much time did this take? You could always factor in how much time you've been practicing as an artist. You know what I mean? Like, oh, about 30 years, right? I mean, no, you weren't working on this one piece 30 years ago, but all that you've done leading up to creating this piece counts for something. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So again, focus on the value, which is highlighting the story behind the piece, the process that's involved, um, maybe some kind of, the experiences you had that kind of led to the piece. Um, and then this is what the buyer will connect with. They really love to know the story behind a work. Like they might be like, if you've had a personal experience, they'll be more excited and interested in that rather than like, oh, I just found this really beautiful image in Time magazine or National Geographic, and I just made a painting of the work, right? Okay. So you see what I mean? Like the why is it important to you to do that piece? What compelled you to do that piece? Was it something about the person's expression? Was it something about their story? Was it something, how does that story relate to you? Right? So these are questions to consider. All right. Number three, practice your delivery. So when someone asks you about your prices, just respond calmly and clearly. For example, this piece is $1,200. Don't immediately offer to lower the price for the buyer. In fact, don't say anything after you say the price. How much is this painting? That's $1,200. How much is that one over there? That one's $800. It's smaller, right? So you don't have to justify it. You're just saying the prices. And please do not offer to lower the price. Let them ask you if you would do anything on the price. Don't offer to, don't offer. I mean, unless they're like a dear, 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 dear friend and not a collector, you know what I mean? Or somebody, right? It's like then just make it a gift, right? But if it's a buyer, do not drop the price. Why? Because it devalues your work and it undermines your integrity, right? It's like if you say the price is $1,200, it's $1,200. Why is it $1,200? We talked about why. The time it took to do it, the materials, the cost, the documentation, the rent, all the pieces, your experience as an artist. So the price is $1,200. I'm being really adamant about this because I used to do this. I used to, like it's $1,200, but I'll sell it to you for 1,000. Just don't do it. It's a mistake. I regret doing it. And it's really important not to do it. As I said, it undermines your integrity and it devalues your work. We don't want to do that. Okay. So, yeah, remember the price includes your time, your materials, your experience, and your uniqueness. All right. Number four, on the other hand, do be prepared for negotiation. So, know your bottom line and stick to it. So let's say you had it at 500 and you know that you would still make your margin at 25%, at 450, right? Um, but let's say the person says, I'll give you 300 for it. Be willing to walk away from the deal. Like, no, I can't. I can't sell it to you for that price. Best I could do is 450, right? So yeah, there's a whole art to the negotiation. And the best practices are to just stick with your price. And if they're buying, if they you could say, if you want a discount, you can buy two pieces and I'll take $50 off. Right. So let me know what you think about that. I know it's really challenging. And if you look at someone like Daniel Arsham, he he's an artist who combines both fine art and functional design, and he builds these incredible constructions. And his confidence in pricing really reflects the innovation and the experience he brings to every piece. So he's getting really good high prices for his work uh, because of what goes into it, right? So check that out. Check Daniel's work out online. You can find him online. It's also amazing work. Okay, here's the next part before we close up. Wait, I'm going on a little further than I expected to because I guess I have some feelings about pricing. Um, all right. So as I was kind of indicating before, pricing evolves with your career. So like I was saying before. So here's how to make sure your strategy stays sustainable. First, review your prices regularly. And as your skills develop, as your reputation grows, as the demand for your work grows, that's how you adjust your rates and when to adjust your rates and adjust them to match. Once I had a couple of solo shows in New York City, in Soho, at OK Harris Gallery, um, there was a gallery that wanted to show my work in Boca Raton. And then there was another gallery out in California. And so I was sending my work out to other places. Having sold a significant portion of the work that I'd shown in New York, I was able to move my prices up gradually. But be careful because this is a bit of a sticky wicket. Some galleries are used to selling very high priced work, and the majority of their artists are very high priced artists. And so this is what happened to me. This gallery in Florida bumped my prices up pretty significantly from where they had been. Meanwhile, I had been selling my work myself as well because I live in the Berkshires and I had a gallery and I had exhibitions, where people could see my work. And so I was used to selling my work to people in the area at prices comparable to my shows in New York City. And so my work was consistently priced. But when the gallery in Florida took the work, they wanted to boost the prices pretty dramatically. And while I I thought that was pretty fantastic, my ego loved it. Um, and they did sell some pieces. They didn't sell out the whole show. And they didn't hold on to the work very long after the show to sell the rest of it at the same price. And so I ended up getting some of the work back. And my job was to keep the prices at that price, right? But meanwhile, my collector base didn't, they weren't buying artwork at those prices in the Berkshires. You know what I'm saying? They might have been okay with spending that price in Florida. In fact, some of them were second homeowners. And so they would even go to the same galleries, right? And visit me in the Berkshires. But oh, and then also regionally, when I was asked to exhibit in another gallery, sort of in the region, they were kind of like, oh, we'll never sell it at that price, right? They'll be like, we don't have collectors that are spending that kind of money up here in the Northeast, in the, in the Berkshires or in New England. So it's just a cautionary tale. And it was challenging. And so that's it's something you might need to negotiate and navigate at some point in the work and down the road. And if you want some guidance on that, feel free to, book a consultation. I'm happy to walk you through the process and talk it through with you. Anyway, let's move on. So yeah, so we review our prices regularly. As you have more experiences, more skills, more equipment, more maybe you've changed your process and it's more elaborate or the expenses are higher. So you're going to move your prices up gradually. And you keep matching it, right? And you keep checking the market. Who else is at your same sort of experience level and doing work that's kind of similar? And what are their pieces selling for? Not what are they priced at? What are they selling for? Because if there are no red dots on that price list you're looking at, then maybe the prices are too high, or maybe they look too low. Who knows? Okay, number two, what you can do for kind of making it sustainable for yourself is to offer tiered pricing. What does that mean? It means create options for different budgets. So you can have like smaller works for emerging collectors and high ticket commissions for really established collectors. You can do prints, to get your work out to more people at a lower price. So these are some ways that you can offset maybe your paintings. I know a couple of artists whose paintings are so exquisite and they take so much time to create that they have to be priced pretty high. And meanwhile, people really love these pieces. And so some of these artists will make fine art prints based on the work. They'll do a giclée or some other print that's based on the work. Not necessarily a reproduction. Sometimes the reproductions doesn't really matter as long as you price these things accordingly. And collectors really appreciate it. They appreciate, especially new collectors, they appreciate being able to buy something at a price they can afford if they're just getting started. Okay, and then number three, you can educate your audience. Share the value, share the process behind your work to help them understand what's involved and why your prices are what they are. You don't have to like educate them. It's that sounds very pedantic, but what I just mean is like, as you're telling your story of your growth as an artist, like I never would have imagined that I would have had a solo exhibit in Soho at one of the best galleries in my 20s. Like I just never would have guessed that would have happened. And it did, and it really helped launch my career and my experiences with other galleries. It was really incredible. So, you know, that's part of the story. That's part of how your prices get to be the prices they are. Okay. Sometimes you might say, yes, so and so purchased my work out of the exhibit I had in Soho or down in Connecticut or wherever it was, right? So that's what I mean by educating your audience. And also your CV or resume should be easily accessible so they can check that out and see, have you had awards? Have you had residencies? How many shows have you been in? That kind of thing. Okay. So again, pricing is more than just some random number you pop on the work. It's really a reflection of your vision and your worth and your experience. So pricing your work confidently is an act of self-worth. It says that your time, your talent, and your creativity have value. And the right people will see that. Take a moment to reflect on what fears or beliefs might be holding you back from charging what you're worth. You're not alone in having any limiting beliefs or fears. We all have them, believe me. We all have to work through them. So Take a look at them, explore them. You can even sort of challenge these beliefs. Can you find evidence to the contrary? Right? If you say, oh, no, no one would pay that for this. And then you can look around, you can see, like, oh, actually, there are these 5 different artists that are getting that already, right? Or I sold 5 pieces like that already. Why wouldn't I be able to sell 5 more? So keep that in mind. And if you need help working through those fears and beliefs, you can always, talk with a coach or a friend or a consultant, guide, whoever, another experienced artist, um, your peers. You know, it's important to work through it. Okay, so now what's one step you can take to start pricing with more confidence? With all the things we talked about, I hope something resonated. I hope this all made sense for you. And yeah, like I said, if you need any support in this, you can always book a consultation. I will put a Calendly link. Maybe I'll put a Calendly link into the description show notes, or reach out to me. Just DM me or message me. And oh, yeah, if you're looking for even more ways to expand your creative income, I mentioned this at the top of the show. You can download my free guide, 50 Creative Income Ideas You Can Start Today. You'll find the link in the show notes, and you can have fun with those. I mean, I really have a blast looking at other ways to make money as an artist, because we all know we have to make money as artists. Otherwise, what are we doing? How are we going to support our habit, our creative habit, right? So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you found this helpful, I would love it if you would like it, share it, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment. Tell me what resonated most, or what fears you have, or what, you know, questions you might have about the material I covered in today's show. I am so grateful you're here, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.